On this episode of The Cypher, we're going to recap Game 7, Sixers Celtics. We'll also talk about what happened in Game 6 between the Lakers and the Warriors. We'll preview both conference finals. We'll touch on legacy. We'll touch on fandom as well. Like, how deep of a fan are you? How long have you been with this squad? How long have you been riding? And we'll also touch on potential player as well as we've already seen coaches being moved. That's coming up on this episode of The Cypher. Sixers go down 112 to 88. Celtics go ahead to the conference finals back to back. This is what I'll say about this matchup. Before the series began, I picked Boston. I thought the Celtics would win in 6 at most. They're the better team. They're the deeper team. Even with Embiid coming in, being the league MVP and how dominant a player he can be, when I look at the Sixers' 3 best players in Tyrese Maxey along with James Harden, and you looked at the surrounding cast, I just didn't think they had enough talent. And bear with me, fam. My voice is a little off. I've been under the weather, but bear with me. This is a good Sixer team, but it's not a title contending Sixer team. They're just a little bit short. They're a piece or two away, and I'm not sure how they go about acquiring that. And when you think about the process and how far along Philly fans and NBA fans in general are into the process, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And when you look at their future, when you look at what Philly can do going forward, there are a lot of question marks. James Harden is 33 years old, and I'll give him all the credit in the world for being able to reinvent himself from dominant ISO scorer to one of the game's best point guards. The guy that can drop 35 a night, that guy's not coming back. James Harden right now is the guy that can give you 19, but he can also add 10 assists and 6 or 7 rebounds a game. He's that guy. And on a title contending team, a legit title contending team, or even a team that can get to the finals, he should probably big picture, he should be your 3rd best player. And that's just not the case in Philly right now. Tyrese Maxey has all the talent in the world, but he's not that far along in his development where I would say he's a legit number 2 option. Not right now. He's talented, he's fearless, but he's still got more developing to do, and he can be very inconsistent at times. And in Joel Embiid, regular season MVP, best big in basketball in terms of being dominant. He is that dominant a player. But he's 28 years old. And if you look at Embiid and how he has a variety of nagging injuries, he doesn't seem like the kind of player who's going to age well. I don't see Joel Embiid being an MVP candidate when he's 33 years old. And when you look at the Sixers roster, I'm talking about their top reserves, top to bottom, within that first framework, their top 7. PJ Tucker's 37. And he probably has another year or two because of what you ask of him. He can still probably do that at a high level. But you're not going to get much better from George Niang, who's 29. Tobias Harris, he's a solid 4th option. He's a very good 4th option. And really, on this Sixer team, if he was afforded more opportunities to shoot the ball, he could prove once again that he's a very solid 3rd option. Again, Embiid's 28. I'm just looking at their top players, and they really do have a lot of question marks. You go down the roster, Paul Reed. I thought Paul Reed had some really good moments throughout the playoffs. Daniel House is more of a journeyman. Jalen McDaniels has the potential to be an all-NBA defender, but he struggles with his shooting. Shake Melton, his biggest issue is consistency. He's in and out of the rotation for that reason alone. A lot of people will put this on Harden, and all I'm going to say is this. He didn't come into this series or this season as Philly's best player. He is their playmaker. He's supposed to be the co-star to Joel Embiid. And if you told me coming into a matchup against the Celtics with all their perimeter defenders as well as their bigs and the way they can defend you, if you told me that James Harden was going to win you 2 games, then I would say the Celtics are in trouble. Because if he can win you 2, the MVP's got to be good for 2 wins as well. And the reality was Joel Embiid did not hold up his end of the bargain. You can say they both flatlined in game 7. I'm not disagreeing. James Harden was 3 for 11, 7 assists, 5 turnovers, 9 points. Embiid wasn't much better, 5 for 18, 8 rebounds, 4 turnovers, 15 points. Your two best players in a game 7 can't go a combined 8 for 29 and be expected to win. I think there's a lot of question marks going forward. And some people will say Doc Rivers should be fired. I'm not going to say Doc should be fired, but I will say this. That seat should be really, really hot. It should be. And what are they going to be able to do? What is Daryl Morey going to be able to do with the roster construction of this team? What pieces, and I don't mean role players, what impactful starters, and maybe somebody coming off the bench that can get you buckets, what kind of impactful players can Daryl Morey put together or add to what they have without giving up something? Because I think I really don't see what they're going to be able to do unless they make a big move. And when you look at a team like the Celtics, they're not going anywhere. They're kind of the opposite of the Sixers. Yes, the Celtics are a veteran team, but their two best players, Tatum and Brown, 24, 26. Marcus Smart seems like he's 40. He's 28. Derek White's 28. Robert Williams, 25. Peyton Pritchard, 25. Grant Williams, 24. Other than Malcolm Brogdon, who's 30, and Al Horford, who's 36, this is actually one of the younger cores when you talk about championship contenders. And they're in a better situation when you look at their roster construction going forward. When you switch over to the Western Conference, it's a similar thing. The only difference is where the process has ultimately failed and they have not won a title since Doc and Moses Malone did their thing back in the day. That's been a minute. But the Warriors, they had built their own dynasty. The Warriors had established themselves as the cream of the crop for the better part of a decade. And the Lakers take them out in 6. Let me be clear on this. I picked the Lakers to win. I am a diehard Laker fan. That's not a secret. At the same time, the only team left when things lined up, when you saw how things lined up in the conference that I feared was the Golden State Warriors. And I know they hadn't been the team that they had been last season in terms of their defense and their consistency on the road. This year, they've been the opposite. Very little defense and inconsistent throughout, even in the playoffs, although they managed to get the one big win against the Kings. Or should I say 2 big wins because they won a game 7. Give them credit. They were on the ropes and they beat a very good Sacramento team. Having said that, though, this Warriors team, I think they're in a transition too. I'm not one of those that think they're done because I think they're one of those very good franchises that know how to retool. I think what you've seen from Steph Curry in this postseason, what you saw from Klay in the first round, struggled against the Lakers, but that was more about the Lakers and their team defense. Andrew Wiggins, I thought, played well in this series, except for the last game. And because of his injury, I'm not even going to go there on him. The only thing he struggled with, and most of the Warriors, is shooting the 3. When Steph Curry for a series shoots 34% for 3, that's not good. Wiggins is 33. Draymond's not going to shoot well from 3 from the get. Jordan Poole, 25%. The thing about the Warriors is when you can play small ball, when you can make others react to you because they can go on these runs where they can hit you with 4 or 5, 6 threes in a row. And before you know it, a 5-point lead is an 18-point lead. And that really didn't happen in this game. Even when they won, it was Steph penetrating. It was the Warriors cutting back door and getting baskets because they were able to move AD side to side and make him defend more in space. I think the Warriors will retool. If there's a question mark, it'll be what's the future for Klay? Because I know they want him back. I know he wants to be back, but I also know that sometimes this can come down to money. And if Klay's looking for a max deal, that might be a sticking point. I would say if anyone was going to be moved, because this is one of those organizations that puts team, chemistry, culture over name, I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Poole was moved. Jordan Poole, a lot of people had him being the third Splash Brother. I think he thought of himself as the third Splash Brother. And in reality, he was inconsistent throughout the season, but in the postseason, he was just he was a shell of himself throughout the postseason. And in this series, 34% from the field, 25% from three, 8 points a game. He just had no impact. And I think they were so much counting on the fact that his ability to create off the dribble, to penetrate, to shoot from distance was going to aid Steph into keeping the Lakers moving side to side, making the Lakers have to recover, making the Lakers have to be more active on the perimeter. They were going to challenge the Lakers more that way. But the Jordan Poole that you saw in Sacramento, that was the same Jordan Poole you saw versus the Lakers, and that was a problem. So when I look at the Warriors, I'm not going to say done, but I am going to say I think there actually needs to be a major move. I don't think this is one of those things where they'll just add somebody that's competent as a role player to kind of deepen their bench. I think they're going to make a major move because a lot of people thought with Jordan Poole leading the way, and you had Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, and before he was moved, obviously James Wiseman, that they had the young pieces to transition them into the next group that was going to continue on and be a contender. A lot of them thought that maybe Kuminga would become a star. Maybe Jordan Poole was going to be that next guy. And that really hasn't come to fruition. The reality is this: Jonathan Kuminga is only 20 years old. He's very raw, but there's no denying his talent. But he's not there yet. He just isn't. And this is about what he's going to develop into over the offseason. But right now, he's not there yet. Jordan Poole, I just think that Jordan Poole will be moved. I do. Moses Moody, I think he's shown you what he can be. I think Moses Moody is going to be a very good high-level 3-and-D player. But what they need another impactful starter, and I think Golden State will pursue that in the offseason. When you look at the Lakers, though, like I said, Golden State was the only team in the conference that I thought could beat the Lakers. I gave the champs that kind of respect, even though I knew the Lakers coming in with their size advantage would be a problem for the Warriors. And I said it, and I'll say it again. Once the Lakers beat Golden State, I believe that the Lakers have a clear path to the finals. All due respect to the Denver Nuggets, who have the best record in the conference, I think the Lakers are going to the NBA Finals. Be it in 6 games or 7 games, the Lakers will meet the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals. You heard it from me first on the Cypher. And I say that with nothing but respect for two dynamic leaders, two dynamic players who get it done in very different ways, but they both get it done. Jimmy Buckets and the Joker. I'm looking at Jimmy Butler and what the Heat have done through this postseason. Not only taking out the number 1 seed Bucks, but how they took them out. They outplayed them. They dominated him. Jimmy Butler was the best player. It wasn't even close in that series. And he led this team as he's led them when they played the Knicks. I thought the Knicks were the better team. I still conceded coming into that series that Jimmy Buckets would be the best player. But this Miami Heat team, we talk a lot about culture. You cannot talk about culture without mentioning the Heat. When you talk about what the Warriors have done over the past decade, you have to talk about that culture. Before them, going back, what Pop and company had done with the Spurs. But this Heat team, what Jimmy Butler has done with this roster is not a star-filled roster. It is a veteran roster. It's filled with guys where most of them would be rotation players at best on most teams. This is not Kevin Love in his prime. This is not all-star Kyle Lowry. Matt Strus, no one ever heard of him. He's one of those guys that basically got in the gym and grinded out an NBA career. Same for a guy like Gabe Vincent. And you have nothing but respect for those guys. And both of them throughout this postseason has made timely shots. But the key to the Heat, it comes down to Jimmy Butler. There's a trio. It's Jimmy Butler. There's Coach Spo, of course, who's one of the best coaches to me in all the NBA, bar none. And then, of course, Pat Riley. and let me give some respect to Bam Adebayo. I think Bam is one of those players that sometimes we almost forget how good a player he is. He isn't as dominant a player as most people would like him to be, but he's as impactful as anybody on the defensive end. He doesn't get the most block shots, but his ability to play in space, to recover, to draw charges, to alter shots, to come from the weak side. Bam Adebayo, next to Anthony Davis, is the second best defender in these playoffs. That's how impactful he's been. And he also gives you 19 and 10 offensively while shooting 53% from the floor. So I'm not saying that Boston is going to walk through the Miami Heat. You should never say that, not when playoff Jimmy hits the floor. So I'm not saying that. On paper, you should be able to say that because the reality is this: the two deepest teams in the NBA, not surprising, are in the conference finals. That will be the Boston Celtics and the Denver Nuggets. Speaking of Denver, the Joker is a bad man. Look what he just did, how he destroyed the Phoenix Suns. 35 points, 13 rebounds, 10 assists, a steal and a block. That's what he averaged for the series. And then when you go down the roster and you look at their balance, Jamal Murray, Bruce Brown, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., KCP, Uncle Jeff. They're getting great contributions from young guys like Christian Braun, who's already turned himself into a very effective wing defender. This is a very deep and balanced team. Deeper than the Lakers are. No argument. And I'm still telling you, the Lakers will win this series. It will be a very good series. It'll be a 6, maybe even 7-game series. But in the end, and I say that, let me put the caveat, in the end, barring injury from any team, that means Celtics, Heat, Lakers, Nuggets, in the end, barring a major injury, Boston Celtics and the LA Lakers will meet one more time. And it's fitting because they'll meet to see which one's going to end up having the most NBA championships in league history once again. I'm excited for these matchups. I'm excited for this next round because a guy like Jimmy Butler can elevate guys. So I know the Heat are going to come ready to play. And I'll say this for the Celtics. If they give forth the effort that they gave to start the Atlanta series, that they gave with the Philly series, they're going to go home. I'll be real. Don't get caught up in what they should do. I'm talking about what they better do when you match up with this Heat team. They're going to play small. They're going to play fast. You can't speed Jimmy Buckets up. He plays at his pace. The Celtics are going to have to find a way to control Jimmy Butler. My guess is, unlike some teams, they're going to take the ball out of his hands more times than not. And when you have Tatum and Brown, you can attack him on the other end. And I want to show a little love to the Knicks because, yes, they beat a number 4 seed. So that's big. And they found themselves in the conference semis. And I know some team guys are giving them a hard time because they lost to the 8th seed, but they're the 5th seed. If you're going to give them a hard time, then you should still be killing the Bucks because they're the 1 seed. I'm going to give the Knicks credit and say that this was a good season. It's a disappointing result in the sense that they seem to can't get beyond the second round. But if you watch the Knicks play, if you watch the lack of ball movement, the lack of player movement, and if you really, really watch the games and know who their true best player is, then you know the moves that they need to make in order to take another step towards being in a conference finals. I'll just touch on fandom real quick before I end the show. All I can say is I've been a Laker fan since I was a kid. And when it comes to football, I've been a Niner fan since I was a kid. My favorite Niner was Roger Craig. I mean, he was a bad man. First 1,000-yard running back who also had 1,000 yards receiving. Just underrated. I mean, Pro Bowler as a halfback, Pro Bowler as a fullback. He was that dude. And that guy broke my heart because I think it was the 1990 NFC Championship game, we had the Giants beat. They're done. And all we have to do is run out the clock. And my guy, Roger Craig, he coughed the ball up. He fumbled. Long story short, Giants go on to score. We lose. And that was rough, man. That was that. I didn't get over that for a minute. Like, I was so mad that day. I was like, anybody mention Roger Craig, I wasn't trying to hear it. I really wasn't. I mean, when your fandom runs deep, it, for all the joy you get out of it, if you're a real fan, that pain comes with it too. And look, as a Laker fan, I can remember that first season after Magic retired. And I think we won like 40 something games, barely, just got into the playoffs, got in the first round, got knocked out. I think it was Portland that knocked us out in the first round. And then the following year, I think we made it to the first round with like 40 wins and got knocked out. But it was weird because that was the year that the Phoenix Suns had Barkley and they would eventually go on to go to the finals. He was the MVP. That squad was loaded, and that Laker team took them to a game 5. Like they could have easily knocked off the number 1 seed, but to Barkley's credit and company, the Suns pulled it out and won the series. But I was proud of that Laker squad. And there was some dark years after that where we was winning 38 games and 37. It was tough for about a 4-year period when you think about it after Magic retired. But if you're a fan, when you ride all the time. And so I rode all the time. And the Lakers got better. They made some good draft moves, and they made one of their big free agent acquisitions. They got Shaq. Obviously, in the same year they traded the rights for Vlade Divac, and they got Kobe. And many, many years later, after the Kobe Shaq Lakers, and Kobe had won his last 2 with Paul Gasol, there was a drought. And they made a big free agency pickup again by getting LeBron. I think the myth is that the Lakers get whoever they want in free agency, and that's not true. The truth is the Lakers, their history, how they got better, they made blockbuster trades. They did. That's what they're known for. They made blockbuster trades throughout their history. And that's how they got better most of the time, with blockbuster moves. But this one was through the free agency. Look, when you think about it, in free agency, as much player movement as there has been, the only 2 big name free agents the Lakers ever got was Shaq and LeBron. And so, yeah, look, you got to ride with your squad no matter what. Now, I know I've heard some people say, well, I like this team in the East, I like this team in the West. I'm not like that. I am a Laker fan. There are players on other teams who I admire, who I think are bad men. And, hey, sometimes you're like, I wish they were on the Lakers. There are teams that I watch and I think they're entertaining and I have respect for. I have respect for how good the Celtics are. I have respect for the heart, how relentless and how fearless Jimmy Butler and his Heat are. I admire what the Warriors did in their run, but that's not my squad. I got one squad, and that's my Lakers. And I don't care if you're Magic Johnson or you're Sedale Threet or you're Byron Scott or you're Rory Sparrow, who's actually a Laker at one time. Vlade Divac, Elton Campbell to Kareem or Will. You can go on and on. If you're the Lakers, then I'm riding with you if you're a Laker, period. Here's the thing. Kobe is arguably the greatest Laker of all time. I still have Magic as that. But I'll say this. If Kobe had ever got traded, because there was time when he was frustrated before they made the Paul Gasol move. If Kobe had got traded, I would have still watched him because he's a great player. He's an all-time great player. But he would have been the enemy. I'm a Laker fan. I'm not going when he goes. I would just follow him and look in the box score, but I'm still rolling with the purple and gold. That's how deep my fandom runs. So tomorrow, like I said, me, Coach, we'll get into it. We'll chop it up and talk about the conference finals matchups. I'm sure we'll talk about the fallout from some of the teams that have lost and maybe the potential for player movement in the offseason on Coffee and Sports in the Morning. It's the NBA Cypher. Next time.